Hello, my name's Fiona Reynolds. I'm the Chief Medical Officer of Birmingham Women's and Children's. It's my honour today to introduce Professor Anne Green. Anne spent her career working at Birmingham Children's Hospital as a consultant in the laboratories, heading up our Inherited Metabolic Disease Unit for the West Midlands and the Neonatal Screening Unit. Anne's career saw many changes in screening, and her career was a glittering career of papers and book chapters and international lectures. She's a really remarkable woman. In her retirement, Anne has turned to storytelling. And the story she's going to tell today is a true story, a remarkable story of Sheila Jones. Sheila Jones was a young child in 1951 when she was diagnosed with phenylketonuria, PKU for short. Sheila's mum, Mary, wouldn't take no for an answer. PKU wasn't treatable back then, but Mary wanted a treatment for her daughter Sheila. And the story Anne tells is the true story of a remarkable mother, Mary, trying to get the right treatment for her child Sheila, her treatment for PKU, and how Sheila became the first child in the world to be successfully treated with dietary modifications for PKU. It's the story of Mary, a mother, Sheila the child, and 3 remarkable doctors who came up with a treatment for PKU. Thank you very much, Anne.
My name is Anne Green, and it's a great pleasure to give this talk about Sheila Jones. Sheila was diagnosed in 1951 at Birmingham Children's Hospital with phenylketonuria. She was the first person in the world to be given a special diet for her condition, and she had this for 4 years. Sheila's life revolved around Birmingham, which is from where I'm speaking from today. I was a biochemist at Birmingham Children's Hospital in the same department where Sheila's diet was prepared. I was able to meet Sheila in 1987, and more recently I met her family, who very generously shared their memories about their life with Sheila and the family. This has enabled me to put the story together. The story starts with Sheila's mother, Mary. Mary was born in Ireland in 1917 to a large farming family in County Leitrim. She came to England alone around 1940 in order to obtain work during World War II. And she obtained a job at the large car factory in the south of Birmingham, fondly referred to as the Austin Works, and she obtained a job as a drilling machinist. In 1945, Mary married in Birmingham and became Mary Jones. She had 2 sons, Terry and Trevor, and then in 1949 she had a daughter, Sheila. Sheila was born in a local maternity hospital at Lordswood in Birmingham. Sadly, around that time, Mary's marriage broke up, and so Sheila came home with her mum to live with her 2 brothers in a flat or maisonette on the east side of Birmingham in Tyseley. This was a small flat on the ground floor and had just 2 bedrooms. At the time, there was very little in the way of welfare support. It was the end of World War II, and Mary no longer had her job, and so in order to supplement her income, she took in 2 lodgers into this small flat. Soon Mary began to realise that all was not well with Sheila, and she became worried. Sheila cried a lot. She was unhappy. Mary had already got her 2 sons, so she knew what to expect, but felt that Sheila was delayed. She was delayed in her sitting and was unable to stand. She was not interested in things, and she didn't want to play. Terry and Trevor's early memories of their sister Sheila was of her being disruptive, pulling things off shelves, especially in the kitchen, crying a lot, and she had a constant rocking motion and head banging. She had no speech, and she communicated by making noises and movements. Mary was so worried about Sheila that she took her to the family doctor. The family doctor immediately saw that all was not well and he referred her to Birmingham Children's Hospital. The hospital was located on the Ladywood site on the west of the city. It was part of the newly established National Health Service. It was a specialist centre for children with about 300 beds. And there was a notable and outstanding leader there, Sir Leonard Parsons. Leonard Parsons had introduced much research and he had recognised the importance of laboratory tests for patient care and research. Central to this story are three key individuals who were all at Birmingham Children's Hospital and had been attracted there by the work of Sir Leonard Parsons. The first of these individuals was Dr. Evelyn Hickman. Dr. Hickman was a local girl from the West Midlands, from Wolverhampton. She had studied chemistry at Birmingham University and was one of the few women who had done this in those early years. She then went on to study at London and Toronto universities, undertaking studies in nutrition and dietetics. She was appointed in 1923 to Birmingham Children's Hospital as the first biochemist and was in fact only the second biochemist to be appointed in a hospital setting in the UK. She developed chemical assays for research studies and patient care, and in particular developed amino acid technology. The second person was Dr. John Gerard. Dr. Gerard had studied medicine at Oxford University and during World War II was a medical officer in the British Army. He was attracted by paediatrics because of the work of Leonard Parsons and came to the Children's Hospital in the 1940s to train in paediatrics. He developed an outpatient clinic for children who were then referred to as having mental retardation. The third person was Dr. Horse Bickle. He studied medicine in several countries, and during World War II, he too was a medical officer, this time with the German Navy. He came to the Children's Hospital attracted by the work of Leonard Parsons in 1949 because of his interest in amino acids, and he undertook a PhD at Birmingham University. If we now go back to Sheila, she had been referred to this special clinic of Dr. Gerard's. Using the terminology in use at the time, this clinic was for children who were deemed to have mental retardation. Today we would refer to them as having learning disabilities. At that clinic, Dr. Bickle had suggested that they undertook ferric chloride testing. This was a relatively new test to look for a new disorder, phenylketonuria. If we now go back to Sheila, she was seen at this clinic at 17 months of age. She could not stand or walk. She had this constant rocking motion. She had no speech, and she had a peculiar mouse-like smell with some eczema and fair hair. Because these findings suggested that she might have phenylketonuria, Mary Jones was asked to bring a specimen of urine for testing. She duly did this on April 14th, which was in fact Dr. Gerard's birthday. They tested the urine and Dr. Hickman's recounts. The RMO came to us and said he had a mentally backward child whose urine gave an olive green colour with ferric chloride and that it might be PKU. This was only the third child that they had tested. Imagine their excitement at finding this. But what about Mary? She wanted treatment for her daughter. She wanted her daughter to get better. And she persistently asked the question, when are you going to treat my baby? Dr. Bickle describes this persistence in his PhD thesis, and I read out to you now his notes. She waited for me every morning before the laboratory door, making quite clear it was treatment what she wanted for her child, not fancy investigations. She did not accept that so far there was no therapy for this condition. The mother's perseverance gave me no chance to rest on the strength of a fine diagnosis. Mary continued to press for help for Sheila, and so the doctors sought to find a way forward. In 1951, there was no treatment for for PKU, and most individuals faced a very bleak future. The idea of a diet, however, had been put forward, and in particular, Dr. Louis Wolfe, who was then a chemist at Great Ormond Street Hospital in London, suggested that this might be possible by removing phenylalanine from dietary protein. He very generously shared his ideas with Dr. Bickle and Dr. Hickman's. The first stage was to find a source of protein. They used casein or milk protein, which they obtained in a hydrolyzed form from Allen and Hanbury's, a company in the UK. The process was then to mix the hydrolyzed casein with the activated charcoal and acetic acid. This was first shaken and then it was passed through a long glass column filled with charcoal. On the slide here you will see a picture of the column. This is the actual column that was used to prepare Sheila's diet and is still in the biochemistry department at the Children's Hospital in a display cabinet. The hydrolyzed casein was passed several times through the column, and in the process it removed various aromatic amino acids, including phenylalanine. Dr. Bickle describes that he and Dr. Hickman's became as black as coal miners. The filtrate from the bottom of the column was then tested to make sure it was free from phenylalanine. And they ended up with a product which was a mixture of amino acids, but without the phenylalanine. This was the first phenylalanine-free casein hydrolysate. The product that they ended up with was extremely unpalatable. It was unpleasant and was a disgusting mix. The doctors set about preparing sufficient of this product to be able to give to Sheila. And by November of that year, Sheila was readmitted to the Children's Hospital in order to start the very first dietary trial of a phenylalanine-free product. The initial period was to give a phenylalanine-free diet, but they soon recognised that this was not nutritionally adequate. They quickly moved on to use a phenylalanine-reduced diet, plus the added amino acids which had been removed in the process. On this product, Sheila maintained and in fact increased her body weight. She was able to stay on this diet for several months whilst in hospital. At that early stage, the benefits of giving such a diet were unclear. And once again, I'd like to read you a short extract from Dr. Bickle's PhD thesis. The assessment of any changes in mental capacity and behaviour of the patient presented great difficulties. The child was too young and of too low intelligence grade to be given any intelligence test. She behaved rather like a 9-month-old baby. There certainly was no sudden improvement under phenylalanine-free food, apart from the fact that she soon became quieter and more contented and ceased banging her head on the pillow. This, however, might have been because she was now accustomed to her new environment. Livelier interest in her surroundings, a more intelligent expression in her eyes, attempts to stand were all recorded by the nursing staff, but are too vague to be indicative of any real improvement. So at this early stage, it was not clear if the diet was having any real benefit. However, they continued to make the homemade dietary product in the laboratory, and Sheila was able to go home with supplies of the diet. In order to get the dietary supply, Mary had to come to the hospital every week to collect the supplies for the following week. This necessitated her coming on the bus from home to the hospital, weekly visits to collect the mixture. Sheila's brothers, Terry and Trevor, remember these visits to the hospital and remember sitting in the waiting room whilst Mary and Sheila went in to see the doctors. Sheila would be examined and would also have investigations, as well as Mary collecting the diet for the following week. Terry and Trevor's memories of the diet were that their mother came home with a large, dark, very heavy glass bottle. The bottle that you see here in the slide is the bottle that they used and is referred to in the laboratory as a Winchester bottle. This is usually used to store strong acids and solvents. Every week, Mary would collect this bottle full of the mixture which had been prepared in the laboratory for the following week for Sheila's diet. Terry and Trevor recall that their mother struggled to give Sheila the diet and that it was awful stuff, and they describe it as like tar. This was the first protein substitute, and Sheila had to take this every day. This is her daily diet sheet showing that the protein substitute was given both morning and evening. She had to take 100 mils in the morning and again in the evening. The rest of the diet was some carbohydrate and some fruit and vegetables. She went home on this diet and continued for a further 7 months. During this time, Mary said Sheila was more lively, she played more, and she had more interest in her surroundings. She was convinced that there was improvements. The doctors also noted changes. Sheila's hair darkened. She had eye contact. She smiled. She'd stopped drooling and began to walk. And Dr. Bickle records in his PhD thesis, since Sheila returned home from hospital, her eyes seemed brighter and livelier than before. She plays more with toys, crawls more, and tried to pull herself up. She makes noises as if she wants to talk. She begins to notice when her name is called, whereas before she seemed deaf. She is interested in all food, crawls to pick up a biscuit from the floor and puts it into her mouth. This is the first time she has done this. She has nearly stopped rolling her head from side to side. She has now begun to quarrel with another baby about toys. The doctors and Mary were both convinced the diet was having real benefit, but she was still mentally backward, and it was difficult to assess whether this was due to the diet or would have happened anyway. It was important to prove this and that they were at a critical stage. Sheila was now 3 years old and she'd had the diet for a year. But what were the real benefits of the diet? How certain could they be that Sheila's change in behaviour and the developments that she had made were genuinely due to the diet? Or would they have occurred anyway? Was there any potential damage from giving the diet longer term? The doctors had been hugely courageous to give this mix to Sheila, but they really didn't know what the long-term effects might be. And thirdly, what about the sheer practicalities of continuing this homemade production as Sheila grew? She would require more and more of this product, and it was being produced in the laboratory, day in, day out. A huge commitment to undertake. So the doctors decided they had to challenge by giving Sheila what would have been a normal amount of phenylalanine to see if there was any change. They decided to do this in October of that year and decided not to tell Mary about this because they wanted to avoid any bias in the decision. This was something that we couldn't conceive of doing today, but in those days this was acceptable. So on the 9th of October, they added to the mix in the dark Winchester bottle an extra 4 grams of phenylalanine, unknown to Mary. This mimicked the amount of phenylalanine that Sheila would normally have been having on a normal diet. On October the 15th, Mary Jones was in tears. She was querying a mistake. Sheila was back to her original state before she had started any of the dietary treatment. She was lifeless. 2 days later, the doctors went to their home and confirmed the findings. They quickly put Sheila back on the phenylalanine-reduced diet, and some days later she returned back to where she had been. They then told Mary Jones what they had done and that this was providing the critical evidence to justify continuing the diet and possibly trying it on other children. Mary agreed that they could repeat this in hospital in order that investigations could be performed on Sheila and that this could be filmed. This was undertaken and provided the critical evidence that this diet was of benefit. So Sheila was admitted for a third time, and the challenge was repeated with investigations and filming. Some of you will have seen this film, which shows the deterioration almost instant when Sheila is given normal amounts of phenylalanine. This provided the critical evidence to continue the diet for Sheila. And so now in December 1952, after 1 year on the diet, Sheila has acquired new skills. She's shown here climbing onto a chair and able to walk with the aid of a chair. Here is Sheila, another year having been on the diet in early 1954, able to play with toys here, playing with a top, with a ball and building a brick tower. She had acquired even more skills. After this, developments occurred very rapidly. Dr. Bickle, Hickman and Gerard published their findings in 1953 and 1954, and there was immediate commercial production of protein substitutes by 1954. More cases were treated with success, in particular those who were diagnosed at a very young age, and newborn screening began to be introduced as early as the late 1950s. Meanwhile, Sheila continued with the diet at home. Between 1954 and 56, she continued with the protein substitute, but she was having huge difficulties with control, and she could no longer take the mix, and she transferred to a low protein diet. By 1956, there was clear there was less progress being made, and her mental age was around 18 months. It had been too late for Sheila to really benefit from starting the diet. At the same time, the follow-up at the Children's Hospital had ceased, and there were some changes, significant changes in family circumstances, which contributed to this. Mary had had another son, Philip, in 1954, and in 1956, for reasons that are unclear, the family moved from their maisonette in Tyseley to the inner city area of Aston, which was a very poor and deprived area of the city. The reasons for this move are unclear, but we can only assume it must have been financial. Aston was a very poor area with a large amount of old Victorian houses in terraces. And so the family moved to one of these back-to-back houses in Aston. These back-to-back houses were very dark. They had one door either entering from the street or there was an entrance from the street into an inner courtyard. In the courtyard, there was communal facilities for washing, drying clothes, and toilet facilities. All the houses, around 30 of them in this case, had shared facilities in this inner yard. And this is where the children could play. There were usually no gardens. The houses were usually 3-storey, with a very small kitchen and living area, 1 bedroom, an attic, and a cellar. And it was to one of these houses that the Jones family moved. Mary was under huge stress looking after her family in one of these houses. Sheila was getting bigger and stronger and needed constant attention. The diet was simply too difficult to give her. Remember, she had no family support and she had 3 sons to look after. She became very stressed, exhausted, and in Trevor's words, Mum was not well. She had a nervous breakdown. By 1958, Mary could no longer look after Sheila. Mary sought help for her problems, and in 1958 and again in 1959, she arranged for her voluntary admission to a psychiatric hospital in order that she could obtain some help for herself. Arrangements were made for the sons to be looked after in various children's homes in Birmingham, and Sheila was admitted to Chelmsley Hospital, a mental hospital usually referred to as an asylum, for these 2 periods while Mary obtained help. although Sheila returned home after these 2 brief periods in Chelmsley Hospital. And by July 1959, it had become clear to Mary that she could no longer look after and care for Sheila at home. She therefore applied for Sheila to be admitted to Chelmsley Hospital on a voluntary basis. By now, Sheila was 9 years old. She was very retarded, or now will be described as having severe learning difficulties, and she had a mental age of around 2 years. This is the list from the admission of Sheila about her abilities, and you will see in summary she needs constant care and supervision. It is hard to believe that Mary had continued to look after Sheila for so long, for 9 years, with her other sons in such poor accommodation and no family support. Chelmsley Hospital, or Asylum as it was referred to in those days, was located on the east side of Birmingham in the countryside, some way from the city centre. It was a series of large buildings with ward blocks shown on the top right here, and a building called the Recreational Centre where patients would go for leisure activities. There was a church, and it was like a self-contained village. At the time of Sheila's admission, there were about 1,000 patients, many of them children. It must have been heartbreaking for Mary to have to leave Sheila here. Mary recovered from her short periods of mental illness and wanted Sheila to come home to live. But Mary was still in the BacktoBack house with her sons in Aston, and it was simply not possible to look after her. Mary's love for Sheila never faltered, and she used to visit regularly on a monthly basis until the day she died. In those days, you had to apply in writing for visit permits to the hospital, and Mary needed transport because it was so far away from the family home. So these monthly visits continued, with her being taken by someone from social services to visit Sheila, having had written permission that this could proceed. Mary continued to visit until she died in 1981. She showed huge courage, perseverance, determination, and above all, love for her family. She had suffered huge hardship and family sacrifice. This is a picture of Mary in 1971 in happier times when she attended Trevor's wedding. Sadly, Mary died in Birmingham in 1981. Sheila then continued to live at Chelmsley Hospital, where she continued to be cared for. There are several staff still working at the hospital who remember Sheila, remember her with affection. And these are some of the things that they remember about her, in particular her strong character and her love for tea. Sheila was cared for there until she died, but Sheila continued to live at Chelmsley, and in the mid-1990s transferred from the large ward block to a small bungalow-type building. Chelmsley Hospital was demolished and partly redeveloped in the mid-1990s, and Brooklands Hospital was built. This was a more family-type environment where the patients lived in small numbers, 4 or 5 people, in a bungalow-type building. And this is where Sheila transferred to in about the mid-1990s. A bungalow here seen on the bottom of this slide, similar to one that Sheila lived in for the rest of her life. Most of the patients at this time were discharged into the community, but those like Sheila who needed to be continued to be cared for lived at Brooklands. Sheila sadly died, aged 49, in 1999 at Brooklands, and is buried in Birmingham. The 3 professionals, Dr. Hickman's, Dr. Gerard and Dr. Bickle, had gone their separate ways in the 1950s, but came together again in 1962. They received an international award, the John Scott Award, from the city of Philadelphia for their work on the treatment for phenylketonuria. And they came together in Birmingham, at Birmingham Children's Hospital, on October 24th, 1962, to receive this award. This was a very prestigious award. Previous winners had been Marie Curie and Alexander Fleming. The award took the form of a special copper medal, and this is the medal that Dr. Gerard received, and you will see it says to the most deserving and for the invention of a method for controlling phenylketonuria. The impact of this first treatment for Sheila was huge. More cases began to be treated and commercial protein substitutes became available. The success of this led to the introduction of newborn screening. This is Sheila's legacy, which is remembered in the department with special plaques in the biochemistry department. Sadly for Sheila, the diet was started too late and she was unable to benefit longer term. But her memory lives on, and the family take great pride in the contribution that she has made for the benefit of all those with PKU today. Sheila truly unlocked the treatment for PKU. And this photo here, taken from the film in 1952, shows her reaching out for Dr. Pickles' keys in the film that he made. It has been a great honour and privilege to give this talk today. I would like to say thank you to all those who've helped me put this story together, in particular staff from Birmingham Children's Hospital and also Chelmsley and Brooklands Hospital. I'd also like to say thank you to the Bickle family and the Gerard family. A special thank you goes to the Jones family, who have helped me put this story together by sharing their memories of their life together with Sheila and Mary in Birmingham. Thank you all very much.